The First Amendment does not just protect the right to speak, it protects the right to know and the right to demand answers from the institutions that failed. For years, these records sat sealed in federal vaults while the agencies that held them told the public everything was handled. Congress disagreed, 427 to 1. That vote was a constitutional act of oversight, and this work is its extension. We read the documents, we cross-reference the data, we publish the patterns, not to accuse, but because a republic that cannot examine its own failures is no longer governed by its people. Transparency is not opposition. It is the Constitution working as designed. Before we begin, here's what this episode covers. 1,002 Fedex shipments sent to or from New York. 4 properties spanning Midtown, the Upper East Side, and Lexington Avenue. 457 Madison Avenue, Floor 4. 160 shipments, the operational hub where staff process daily logistics. 9 East 71st Street, the largest private residence in Manhattan, held through a shell entity called NES LLC. 575 Lexington Avenue, home of HBRK Associates, the financial nexus that moved $4.69 million through TD Bank. A corporate layer, NYSG LLC, NES LLC, C.O.U.Q Foundation, J. Epstein and Company. Wire transfers totaling $24.1 million routed through New York accounts. And the prosecution. SDNY convicted Ghislaine Maxwell. NYDFS fined Deutsche Bank $150 million. As of March 2026, the House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed Attorney General Bondi, and the DOJ has released its 6th batch of files. 1,002 packages, 4 properties, $24.1 million. One borough ran it all. $1,002. That is the number of FedEx shipments we can tie to New York, sent, received, or routed through addresses in Manhattan. Out of 2894 total shipments in the dataset, more than 1 in 3 connects to New York. 4 properties. 457 Madison Avenue, Floor 4, the office. 9 East 71st Street, the mansion. 575 Lexington Avenue, the financial hub. 301 East 66th Street, the apartment. And $24.1 million in wire transfers flowing through accounts connected to New York addresses. This is not a story about a vacation home. This is not about a private island. Those places matter, but they are satellites. New York was not one node in the network. New York was the network. The operations ran from here. The money moved through here. The corporate entities were registered here. And ultimately, the prosecution happened here. This episode is about what New York looked like from inside the data. 4 properties, all in Manhattan, all within a 15-block radius. 457 Madison Avenue, Floor 4, zip code 10022. This is the operations hub. 160 FedEx shipments in and out. Staff on site, daily logistics. 0.7 miles north, 9 East 71st Street, the townhouse, the largest private residence in Manhattan, held through NES LLC. 0.3 miles east, 575 Lexington Avenue, 4th floor, HBRK Associates, the financial office. $4.69 million flowed through TD Bank accounts registered here. And 0.5 miles northeast, 301 East 66th Street, the apartment. You could walk between all four in under 20 minutes. The operations hub, the residence, the financial office, and the apartment, all clustered on the east side of Midtown Manhattan. This is not a scattered network. This is a command center. Why a dedicated episode on New York? Because every evidence domain we've analyzed converges here. Not most of them, all of them. Banking. Deutsche Bank's New York branch was the primary relationship from 2013 to 2018. 5 years of banking through a single New York office. Corporate. At least 6 entities were registered with the New York Department of State. Not one holding company, not 2. 6 separate legal structures, all domiciled in one jurisdiction. Shipping. Of the 2894 Fedex shipments in our dataset, 1,002, more than a third, connect to New York addresses. It is the largest single state hub, more than Florida, more than New Mexico, more than the U.S. Virgin Islands. Legal. SDNY, the Southern District of New York, was the venue for Ghislaine Maxwell's prosecution. The same courthouse that sits blocks from the addresses we are about to discuss. Regulatory. NYDFS, the New York Department of Financial Services, issued the $150 million consent order against Deutsche Bank for compliance failures related to these accounts. An entity mentions. The phrase New York appears 8.2 million times across the corpus, more than any other location. When we started this project, we expected Florida to dominate. It doesn't. New York does. New York is not one thread. It is the loom. Source check. This is a multi-domain episode. Unlike episode 6, which drew from a single source type, this episode pulls data from 5 domains: FedEx shipping invoices, wire transfer records, bank documents, corporate registries, and court filings. That breadth is a strength, but each domain has its own limitations, and you need to understand them before we go further. The FedEx data covers only 2000 to 2005. That means we have no shipping visibility after Epstein's arrest. The wire transfer set is 224 rows. It is not a complete banking record. It is what survived in the documents the DOJ released. Corporate registry lookups are point-in-time snapshots. An entity's status could have changed since we last checked. The 8.2 million entity mention count includes OCR duplicates and variants. The real number is lower. We just cannot determine how much lower. And our current event slides cite journalism sources from March 2026, which may be outdated by the time you watch this. Most importantly, we cannot determine whether any shipment, wire, or corporate entity relates to criminal activity. We present the data structure. We do not assign criminal meaning. That distinction matters for everything that follows. 457 Madison Avenue, Floor 4, Zip Code 10022, Midtown East, Manhattan. 160 FedEx shipments flow through this address, inbound and outbound. Think about what that means operationally. 160 shipments over roughly 5 years. That is about 32 shipments per year, almost 3 per month. Someone at this office was filling out FedEx air bills, printing labels, and handing packages to a courier on a near-weekly basis. Both the personal Epstein account and the NYSG LLC corporate account list this address. 2 separate billing accounts, 1 address. The names attached to shipments here aren't random. Lauren Kwintner, 59 shipments. Eric Gany, 39. Ghislaine Maxwell, multiple. Douglas Schoettle, 11. Larry Morrison, multiple. This is not a mailing address where someone occasionally received a package. This is a logistics center with named staff processing shipments on a regular schedule. People showed up to this office. They handled paperwork. They shipped and received on behalf of the organization. When we look at the temporal pattern, we see sustained activity across years, not seasonal spikes. The office ran continuously from 2000 through 2005. 457 Madison Avenue was the nerve center. Everything flowed through here. 5 names recur at 457 Madison Avenue. Lauren Kwintner, 59 shipments. She is a New York licensed attorney, the highest volume individual recipient at this address. Eric Gany, 39 shipments, regular recipient. Ghislaine Maxwell, 56 shipments across New York, appearing in over 10 OCR name variants, sender and recipient. She appears in 3 evidence domains: Fedex, wire transfers, and entity mentions. Douglas Schoettle, 11 shipments. And Darren Indyke, 17 FedEx events. In-house counsel for over 15 years. He appears in 2 domains, FedEx and bank records. These are not one-time contacts. These are sustained presences, people who show up in shipping records across years in consistent operational roles. The office at 457 Madison had a staff, and that staff left a paper trail. If 457 Madison Avenue was the nerve center, where did things go? Palm Beach, Florida. Regular shipments to house staff. Alfredo Alessi's name appears 13 times as a sender from the New York office. Zorro Ranch, New Mexico. Periodic shipments, many third-party billed. K.L. Gordon's name appears on shipments from this route. Little St. James, USVI. Irregular but notable. Rosemary Pitcher signed for 16 shipments at the Jeggy hangar. Cesco shipments, 52 to 87 pounds, moved to the island. Other New York addresses, internal transfers between 9 East 71st and 301 East 66th. And international, occasional shipments to Paris and London. The pattern is hub and spoke. 457 Madison at the center, the properties at the edges. Packages flowed outward from the command center to the network. When we plot the temporal pattern at 457 Madison, it looks like an office schedule. Shipments recorded across all months, year after year. No seasonal gaps, no vacation shutdowns, no summer lulls. This address maintained a continuous operational tempo from 2000 through 2005. Peak months, December 2001, 77 shipments in a single month. December 2003, 90 shipments, 90 FedEx transactions in 31 days. That is roughly 3 shipments every single day, including weekends. The December spikes could be end-of-year activity, or they could reflect the normal rhythm of a functioning office that simply had more to ship during the holidays. We present both possibilities. The decline begins in mid-2004. Volume drops noticeably, and by 2006 there are only scattered shipments, a handful, then silence. Consider what that decline means. The arrest in Palm Beach happened in July 2006. The shipping volume at this New York office began falling roughly 18 months before that arrest. We are not claiming causation. We are observing the timeline. This is not hobby shipping. This is not personal correspondence. The tempo, the consistency, the staffing. This address operated like an office, because it was one. What does 457 Madison Avenue tell us? From the data, it was an operational office, named staff, at least 5 individuals appearing repeatedly across years. Sustained shipping activity across 5 years. A hub and spoke topology connecting all other properties in the network. Used by both the personal account and the corporate NYSG LLC account. 2 billing structures, 1 address. And the decline in activity begins roughly 18 months before arrest. One interpretation. The dual account usage suggests the office served both personal and entity functions. Not unusual for a private office, but notable when you are trying to understand whether personal and corporate activities were kept separate or blended together. The pre-arrest decline could indicate operational wind-down, or awareness, or simply a change in business needs. We present all 3 possibilities. But we do not claim that any specific shipment was criminal. We do not claim the office's purpose was illegal, and we do not claim the decline was caused by legal awareness. The data shows what the data shows. An office, staff, packages, a decline. The meaning is yours to evaluate. 9 East 71st Street, the largest private residence in Manhattan. Upper East Side, between Madison and Fifth Avenues, approximately 28,000 square feet. For comparison, the average Manhattan apartment is roughly 750 square feet. This home is nearly 40 times larger. Originally owned by Leslie Wexner, the founder of L Brands, the company behind Victoria's Secret. Wexner was one of the wealthiest people in Ohio. He built this home. And then it ended up in Epstein's possession through a holding entity, NES LLC, registered with the New York Department of State, DOSID 2288572. The estimated value? Over $50 million. In the Fedex data, multiple shipments connect to this address, the 10021 zip code. The mansion shows up as both a sender origin and a recipient destination. But it is not the shipping volume that makes this address significant. It is the ownership structure. How did a person who publicly described himself as a financial advisor come to own the largest private home in Manhattan? And what entity was used to hold it? The next 2 slides examine those questions. NES LLC, Department of State ID 2288572, status active. This is the entity that holds 9 East 71st Street, not personal ownership, corporate ownership through a limited liability company. What does that mean in practice? It means the property does not appear in Epstein's name on public real estate records. It appears under NES LLC. A searcher looking for properties owned by Jeffrey Epstein would not find it unless they knew to look for NES LLC. The registered address was originally the property itself, 9 East 71st Street, New York. But in 2013, the address was changed to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Think about what that means. The mansion is still in Manhattan. It did not move. The bricks, the floors, the 28,000 square feet, all still on the Upper East Side. but the legal address of the entity that owns it moved 2,000 miles south to the Caribbean. Why does that matter? Because moving a holding company's registered address changes which jurisdiction's laws govern it. It changes which regulators have oversight. It changes which courts have easy access to corporate filings. And this is not an isolated case. The address migration from New York to the USVI follows a pattern we see across multiple Epstein entities. Corporate structures registered in New York, then migrated offshore. The property stays in Manhattan, the entity moves to the islands. NES LLC is still active as of our last registry check. The entity persists. The address changed. The mansion remains. Leslie Wexner built 9 East 71st Street. Wexner, founder of L Brands, one of the wealthiest people in Ohio, with a net worth estimated in the billions. The property was transferred to Epstein through NES LLC. The transfer price is unclear. Some reports say $0, some say $1, others say the terms were undisclosed. Let that register. A property valued at over $50 million, transferred through a corporate entity at a price that no one can confirm. That is not a normal real estate transaction. What is documented is the mechanism, a corporate entity transfer, not a personal sale recorded in standard public filings. And there is a parallel financial flow. The C.O.U.Q Foundation, a New York entity, transferred $14.2 million to Wexner's YLK Charitable Fund. We are not claiming these two flows are connected. We are observing that they exist in the same data. A property moves one direction. Charitable funds move the other direction, both through New York registered corporate entities, both involving the same two people. The Wexner relationship is extensively documented in external sources. What our corpus adds is the entity-level view: NES LLC, C.O.U.Q Foundation, and the corporate structures that facilitated both transfers. 9 East 71st Street Corporation, filed August 25, 1989, dissolved May 14, 2015, duration approximately 26 years. This is a separate entity from NES LLC, same property address, 9 East 71st Street, but a different legal structure. This is a corporation, not a limited liability company. Different formation date, different dissolution date, different lifespan. So we have two entities associated with the same Manhattan address. One, 9 East 71st Street Corporation, filed in '89, dissolved in 2015. The other, NES LLC, still active, with its address migrated to the USVI in 2013. Why two entities for one property? One possibility is sequential ownership structures. One entity replaced the other. Another is layered legal protection. Two entities providing different liability shields simultaneously. We do not know the specific purpose of the dual entity arrangement, but we observe the outcome. The corporation was dissolved in 2015. The LLC persisted. The entity that migrated offshore survived. The one that stayed in New York did not. That pattern, migration equals survival, is worth noting as we move into the financial section. 575 Lexington Avenue, 4th floor. HBRK Associates, Incorporated. This is the financial office, not the operations hub, that is 457 Madison, not the residence, that is 9 East 71st. This is where the money moved. The name HBRK does not appear to stand for anything publicly documented. It is 4 letters, an opaque entity name. Unlike J. Epstein and Company, which announces its principal on the letterhead, HBRK reveals nothing about who is behind it. Its principals are Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn, the same Darren Indyke who appears in 17 Fedex shipments at 457 Madison, the same Indyke and Kahn who served as executors of the estate, two men whose names connect the shipping operation to the banking operation to the will itself. We know about this address because of a TD Bank Suspicious Activity Report, a SAR, filed in October 2019. Document number EFTA 01656524. That SAR identifies HBRK Associates, its TD Bank accounts, and the wire transfers that flowed through them. 457 Madison moved packages. 575 Lexington moved money, both within walking distance. 2 hubs, 1 network. HBRK Associates held 2 accounts at TD Bank. Account ending 0953, $3,743,789 inbound. That is the larger of the 2. Account ending 1269, $948,010 inbound. Combined, $4,691,799. Nearly $4.7 million flowing into 2 accounts at a single entity, HBRK Associates, at 575 Lexington Avenue, 4th floor, New York. And remember, this is only the inbound total documented in 1 SAR from 1 bank. It does not include outbound transfers. It does not include accounts at other institutions. It is a window, not a wall. This data comes from the TD Bank Suspicious Activity Report, BSA reference number 31000155070501, filed in October 2019. The SAR was part of DOJ Dataset 10. $4.7 million, 2 accounts, 1 entity, 1 address. Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn. These 2 names appear across more evidence domains than almost anyone else in the corpus. Darren Indyke, in-house counsel for over 15 years, HBRK principal, estate executor, 17 Fedex events at 457 Madison Avenue. He appears in 2 evidence domains, Fedex and bank records. Richard Kahn, HBRK principal, estate executor, cross-entity signatory. Together, they are the principals of HBRK Associates, the entity through which $4.69 million flowed at TD Bank. They are both named in the 2019 will as executors of the estate, and they both connect the shipping operation at 457 Madison to the financial operation at 575 Lexington. This is not about 2 people. It is about the structural role they occupy, bridging the operational and financial sides of the New York network. 2 outbound wires from HBRK Associates deserve attention. First, $20,000 to Walt Schurte, a law firm in Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein, a microstate between Austria and Switzerland. Population, roughly 39,000 people. One of the most opaque financial jurisdictions in Europe. And it is the same jurisdiction where the Butterfly Trust was administered. A $20,000 wire from a New York financial office, 575 Lexington Avenue, 4th floor, to a Liechtenstein law firm. We do not know the purpose of this payment. We know only that it happened. Second, $150,000 to the Butterfly Trust. Dated February 5th, 2019. Let that date sink in. February 5th, 2019. 5 months before Epstein's arrest on July 6th, 2019. Before the banks began shutting down accounts across the network. Before the world learned that the 2008 non-prosecution agreement had not ended the story. $150,000 from a New York entity to an offshore trust structure in Liechtenstein in the months before everything collapsed. We corrected an earlier error on the Butterfly Trust figure. Our initial data suggested $15 million, but after VLM verification, that is, after we used a vision language model to reread the original document, the actual amount is $150,000, 100 times smaller than our first reading. The correction is documented. That is what transparent science looks like. New York to Liechtenstein, New York to the Butterfly Trust. The financial office at 575 Lexington was not just receiving money, it was sending it to offshore structures. And the timing of that last wire is something investigators should examine closely. HBRK Associates connects New York to 3 offshore jurisdictions through documented wire transfers. To the U.S. Virgin Islands through wire transfers to entities based there. To Liechtenstein, $20,000 to Walk Schurte, the law firm involved in trust administration. To the Butterfly Trust, $150,000 in February 2019. And to the estate itself, Indyke and Kahn, HBRK's principals, serve as executors of the 2019 will. Step back and look at the structure. This is the financial parallel to 457 Madison's shipping topology. We showed you that Madison Avenue was the package hub, sending shipments to Palm Beach, New Mexico, the USVI, and internationally. Now look at 575 Lexington. It is the money hub, sending wire transfers to the USVI, Liechtenstein, and the Butterfly Trust. The same hub and spoke pattern. Different domain, same architecture. One hub moved packages, the other moved money. Both from Midtown Manhattan, both through corporate entities, both staffed by the same names. When 2 independent evidence domains, shipping and banking, produce the same structural pattern, that convergence is analytically significant. NYSG LLC, New York Strategy Group, formed January 13, 2000. Status: inactive. This is the corporate Fedex account, account number 229207504. 199 shipments billed to this account, totaling approximately $6,939 in shipping charges. The address: 457 Madison Avenue, floor 4. The same address as the personal account, the same staff handling shipments, but different books, a separate billing account under a separate entity name. The last NYSG shipment, September 28, 2005, the same day as the last overall FedEx shipment in the dataset. NYSG LLC is now inactive. It ran for 5.5 years. It shared an office with the personal account. It was staffed by the same people, and it stopped on the same day. 2 accounts, 1 office, 1 cessation date. C.O.U.Q Foundation. A New York entity, now dissolved. The key transaction, $14.2 million transferred from C.O.U.Q Foundation to the YLK Charitable Fund, $14.2 million. To put that number in perspective, $14.2 million is more than most people will earn in a lifetime. It is roughly the cost of building a new public elementary school, and it moved from one foundation to another in a single documented transfer. YLK is Leslie Wexner's charitable entity. So this is $14.2 million flowing from an Epstein-connected foundation to a Wexner-connected foundation, both entities registered in New York, both now dissolved. Remember, the Wexner relationship also involved the transfer of 9 East 71st Street, the largest private home in Manhattan, through NES LLC. So we have a property moving in one direction and charitable funds moving in the other direction. We are not claiming these two flows are connected. We stated that clearly earlier, but they exist in the same data involving the same two people through New York registered entities. We do not know the full purpose or activity history of C.O.U.Q Foundation. We know it existed, we know it is dissolved, and we know it moved $14.2 million. The C.O.U.Q Foundation is one of at least 6 New York registered entities in the corpus. Each had a specific function, each connected to the broader network, and each in its own way moved either assets, liability, or both. J. Epstein and Company Incorporated, a New York corporation, the financial management entity. Unlike NYSG LLC or NES LLC or HBRK Associates, all of which use initials or abbreviations that reveal nothing about their principal, this entity bears the full name, J. Epstein and Company. It tells you exactly who is behind it. It appears in entity mentions across multiple datasets in the corpus. Its exact current status and full activity history are beyond what we can fully reconstruct from the documents we have, but its existence is documented. This is the branded entity, the one that clients would have known, the one that Epstein used to present himself as a financial manager, the public-facing operation. It operated in the open under its own name while the other entities, NYSG, NES, HBRK, operated alongside it with names that meant nothing to an outsider. Why does this matter? Because it reveals a layered structure. One entity in the open, visible, bearing the name. Multiple entities in the background, handling different functions, shipping, property holding, banking, all registered in New York. One name in the open, multiple entities in the shadows. 6 entities, all registered in New York, all connected. NYSG LLC, inactive. The corporate Fedex account, 199 shipments from 457 Madison. NES LLC, active. The holding entity for 9 East 71st Street. Address migrated to the U.S. Virgin Islands in 2013. 9 East 71st Street Corp. Dissolved in 2015. Filed in 1989. A separate entity for the same property. HBRK Associates. The financial office at 575 Lexington. $4.69 million through TD Bank. C.O.U.Q Foundation, dissolved. $14.2 million transferred to Wexner's YLK Fund. J. Epstein and Company, the named financial management entity. 6 entities, shared addresses, shared principals, different functions, different legal structures, different lifespans, but all domiciled in one city. New York was not just the location, it was the legal domicile. the place where the corporate architecture was built. Southern District of New York. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted on December 29, 2021, sentenced to 20 years. Charges: sex trafficking and conspiracy. In our corpus, Maxwell appears across 3 evidence domains. 56 Fedex shipments in New York, appearing in over 10 OCR name variants because the handwritten airbills spelled her name differently almost every time. Over 49,000 entity mentions across the full corpus, and wire transfer records. 25,800 events in her cross-domain profile. That is more cross-domain activity than any other individual in the corpus except Epstein himself. The jurisdictional overlap is worth noting. The same city where the corporate entities were registered, NYSG, NES, HBRK, C.O.U.Q, J. Epstein and Company, is the same district that prosecuted the case. SDNY had jurisdiction because the alleged crimes occurred in this district. The corporate infrastructure was here. The properties were here. The staff was here. The packages moved through here. And ultimately, the prosecution happened here. New York was not just the command center for the operation, it was the command center for the legal reckoning. July 2020. The New York Department of Financial Services issued a $150 million consent order against Deutsche Bank's New York branch. The subject: Anti-Money Laundering and Bank Secrecy Act compliance failures related to the Epstein banking relationship. The relationship period, 2013 to 2018. 37 pages of findings. Insufficient due diligence. Failure to flag suspicious transactions. Failure to properly investigate red flags. The consent order is one of our key reference documents. We extracted the full structure in our research phase. Epstein accounts, Butterfly Trust Financials, ARC conditions, anonymized persons, specific violations. Notice the jurisdictional loop. The New York Department of Financial Services, a New York regulator, fined Deutsche Bank's New York branch, a New York banking operation, for compliance failures related to a New York client. The regulatory machinery that caught the compliance failures was in the same city as the compliance failures themselves. New York regulated what New York enabled. March 4th, 2026. The House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi. The vote, 24 to 19. 24 to 19. That is not a party line vote. 5 Republicans crossed party lines to vote yes. Nancy Mace, Republican from South Carolina, introduced the motion herself. Think about what that means. In the current political environment, 5 members of the majority party voted to subpoena their own party's attorney general over Epstein-related document releases. That is not routine. That is not partisan theater. That is a bipartisan statement that the DOJ's compliance with the transparency mandate is inadequate. The subpoena relates to DOJ compliance with Public Law 119-38, the Epstein Records Transparency Act, signed into law in November 2025. The Act mandates release of Epstein-related records. The House Oversight Committee concluded that the DOJ is not in full compliance. The DOJ's response, as of the subpoena date, one word: reviewing. This is current events. This is happening now. and it is happening in the context of the same jurisdiction, New York, SDNY, where the prosecution occurred, where the corporate entities were registered, and where the regulatory enforcement was carried out. The same courthouse, the same city, the same unfinished business. The legal reckoning is not over. It is still unfolding. March 5th and 6th, 2026. The DOJ released its sixth batch of Epstein-related files, one day after the Bondi Subpoena. The notable detail: files related to Donald Trump had been withheld from prior releases. The stated reason, and this is a direct quote from the DOJ, they were incorrectly coded. Incorrectly coded. Not missing, not classified, not redacted for national security, not withheld due to an ongoing investigation. Incorrectly coded. The files existed. They were in the DOJ's possession. They were available for release. They were simply not included in the 5 previous batches because someone or some system applied the wrong classification code. And that coding error meant that for 5 consecutive release cycles, spanning months, these documents sat in a government database while Congress demanded full compliance with a law that required their release. We note this without editorial commentary. We are not assigning intent to the coding error, but we will say this: the fact that coding errors can withhold entire categories of documents from mandated releases is itself a data quality observation. We have spent this entire series dealing with OCR errors, classification errors, and coding errors in our own pipeline. We know what these errors look like. We know what they cost. Coding errors in government releases have the same structural effect as coding errors in our pipeline. They create gaps. And gaps, as we have discussed throughout this series, require disclosure. The DOJ disclosed 5 releases late, but they disclosed. Transparent science. What we showed: 1,002 Fedex shipments, 4 properties, a logistics hub at 457 Madison with named staff, a mansion held through NES LLC, an entity that migrated its address from New York to the US VI, the Wexner Transfer, HBRK Associates at 575 Lexington, $4.69 million through TD Bank, Indyke Kahn bridging the operational and financial sides, outbound wires to Liechtenstein and the Butterfly Trust, 6 corporate entities, the Maxwell conviction, the Deutsche Bank fine. What we interpreted: 1 reading of the data: 457 Madison operated as a logistics center. The dual hub topology suggests functional separation. Entity migration from New York to the Virgin Islands is consistent with offshore repositioning, and the jurisdictional loop: New York operation, New York banking, New York regulation, New York prosecution, is notable. What we did not claim: criminal purpose, that entity structures were designed to evade law enforcement, that the Wexner Transfer and the C.O.U.Q transfer are connected, that DOJ coding errors are intentional. What remains unknown: the contents of every package, the full history of every entity, the complete scope of financial activity, the purpose of the dual entity structure. Transparent science. What we found, what we interpreted, what we didn't claim, and what we don't know. Error log. Tags. The New York subset is a filter of the full dataset. Patterns at the state level may differ from the whole. Fedex data covers only 2000 to 2005, no post-arrest shipping visibility. Tags, 224 wire transfers is not a complete banking record. The Butterfly Trust amount was corrected from $15 million to $150,000 after VLM verification. Tags, corporate registry lookups are point in time. J. Epstein and Company's activity is not fully reconstructed. Tags, the 8.2 million mention count for New York includes OCR duplicates. Tags, the 15-block radius is estimated. The HBRK combined total is a calculated sum. Tags, slides 26 and 27 cite March 2026 events. They may be outdated by the time you watch this. The DOJ's incorrectly coded characterization is their phrasing, not independently verified. These are the known limitations. They are part of the record. This episode documented the New York infrastructure, the properties, the entities, the money, the prosecution. Now, here is what specific authorities can do with this information. SDNY. The Southern District of New York prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell. You secured a conviction. 25,800 events in her cross-domain profile suggest there are additional investigative targets within New York jurisdiction. This corpus contains 2.1 million documents. Your office has the clearance to access the full data set. The phone number is 212-637-2200. NYDFS. You fined Deutsche Bank $150 million for compliance failures. That consent order covered the banking relationship from 2013 to 2018. This corpus documents more than 40 accounts across 6 New York domiciled entities. Are there compliance gaps that consent order did not examine? The contact is banking@dfs.ny.gov. New York Attorney General. 6 Epstein entities were incorporated under New York law. NES LLC is still active. DOS ID 2288572. Its address migrated to the U.S. Virgin Islands in 2013, but it remains a New York formation. C.O.U.Q Foundation transferred $14.2 million to a Wexner-linked fund before dissolution. Are there settlement enforcement questions for entities that still exist under New York jurisdiction? File at ag.ny.gov/complaint. House Oversight Committee. You voted 24-19 to subpoena the Attorney General. This corpus can quantify exactly what is in the 42% of pages you have not seen. We have the analytical infrastructure to help. The website is oversight.house.gov. Senate Judiciary Committee. Request Epstein-related DOJ communications. The Transparency Act mandates disclosure. The website is judiciary.senate.gov. And for the public, for anyone watching this, contact your representative. The release documents are at justice.gov/Epstein-records. Read them. Ask questions. Demand answers. And if you find an error in anything we have presented, in our data, our methodology, or our claims, contact us. We correct publicly. Every correction is documented. That is the standard.